Hi again, how are you? I hope you are well, with health and peace. Today, I'd like to speak a little with you concerning the chapter 6 of my book, Hypnosis in the Helm of Design. And the chapter is The Multiple Faces of Love. In this chapter, I discuss some elements in literature or even in concrete social phenomena. For example, we discuss a very beautiful romance of João Guimarães Rosa, named Grande Sertão Veredas, in which he told us an history about two guys, Riobaldo and Diadorim. They were jagunços, something that's similar to the cowboy in the forest. They were people contracted to use gangs in disputes and conflicts between the big rural farmers. And these two guys become very close. And there is something interesting in such a book, because Riobaldo had a very strong sentiment toward Diadorim. At the beginning, he thought it was a friendship, something almost like a brotherhood. But he had a very strong conflict, because he perceived he was in love. He followed in love towards Diadorim. And at this time, to assume the love between two men were very complicated in this region. It's a rural region, and the prejudice was very strong. But during at the end of the book, he was surprised by the fact that Diadorim was not a man, but a woman. But when he discovered it, Diadorim was dying in a conflict against a common enemy. So, in some way, he was in soulagement. He was no more in conflict. But when he could exercise his sentiment toward that woman who was dressed and speak like a man, she was dying. It's a kind of irony of life, and it speaks about a lot of love. There is another clinical situation, a case study developed by Milton Erickson and Lawrence Kuby in 1941 about a girl who tried suicide many times. He fell in love about a man, but when she connected with this love and this man was interested in her, she tried the suicide. It's a very complex case, because in her past, when she was a little girl, her mother said that she could not allow the boys was there, the boy come toward her to make the nasty things. When she was the first menstruation, her mother was dying, and she created an association. And when she was 18 years, she and her closer friend were falling in love for the same guy. But she was accommodated with the fact that the guy preferred her friend, and she could no more love this guy. Unfortunately, her friend was died, and 1 or 2 years after this guy searched for her and wanted to marry with her. So she became to have very complicated, very crisis of depression and suicide. And why? If she loved him. Erickson proceeded to a very complex technique of age regression in order to help her to understand that her mom was correct to instruct a little girl, but she was no more there to instruct a woman. And as she was not there, Erickson himself, as a doctor, could instruct her about the psychosexual development of women and men. After that, she allowed herself to contract a marriage with this guy. A third situation that we discuss in this chapter is a comparison between 2 Brazilian mediums. And the question is, why 2 men from the same religious belonging, had so different destinies? The former, Chico Xavier, a kind of contemporary saint. The later, John of God, the famous healer who attracted people from many countries in the world, but is now in jail due to the fact that he was taken very a lot of a kind of crimes, especially sexual crimes. But what these histories, these so complex histories, which are this relationship with love in this sign perspective, as discussed by Farouk Saif, and I developed this in my book, we speak about the multiple phases of love that have a common source, named as eros. Saif took this from the Greek mythology, eros, and this desire toward the love, toward the life, the sentiment of being integrated with the love, with the life, is inherent of human beings. Saif named this as holophilia, and our incompleteness lead us to search for this whole sentiment. And following his ideas, Eros can create different forms of love. Agape, a teleological love and a spiritual love. Amour, the erotic love between the lovers, a couple, for example. Marriage, dating, engagement. Philos, which means a deep affinity, such as in the idea of philosophy, but also pornography, which is a kind of degradation of all of the basic sentiment of eros. So when we speak about the first case study, we can conceive a kind of confusion in which, in a conscious level, Riobaldo imagined that he had philos, but in the deepest of his soul, he knew he was took by eros, by amour, toward Diadorim. in the case of the girl with whom Erickson worked, Erickson and Kirby, Lawrence Kirby, Eros was blocked and could not develop to become amour toward the guy who loved her, with whom they created a family. So hypnosis helped them to find this trajectory and to liberate Eros in order to become amour. And in the comparison of these two famous Brazilian mediums, we have Chico Xavier, a man who dedicated all of her life as charity and love toward others, and making a kind of poem of gratitude toward the divine. Of course, we could consider him a kind of saint, a contemporary saint. And the other guy, John of God, who was also the target of an appeal, a spiritual appeal, who probably had operated many spiritual healings, was taken by the fame, the money, and dive in a very complicated ocean of desires that lead him to pornography. So, in the both cases, Chico Xavier and John of God, we have not only decision and discipline, but teleology. What led him to go with many sacrifice, a very difficult discipline of life, but concentrated in love. And the other guy, without this discipline, only with the talent, the faculty, to be took by his all darkness. So, all of these cases in this chapter lead us to consider which are the relationship of love with hypnosis. And we can only say that people such as Milton Erickson, Leon Chartok, Ernest Rossi, Jeffrey Zagan, and many other guys, many other therapists who dedicate their life as a teleological perspective, a teleological poem, considering hypnosis as a form to touch other souls. Hypnosis, in the sense, is not only a technique, but is an attitude of life, of dedication, that requires respect, discipline, but above all, meaning of life. Thank you very much. Good evening, and bye-bye.